spotlight on something truly special that could revolutionize your academic journey. It's called Glintplus, and believe me, it's a lot more than your typical academic service provider. Navigating the world of academia isn't easy. It's all about pioneering research, meticulous editing, and striving for nothing less than excellence amidst fierce competition. That's exactly where Glintplus comes in, to ensure that you invest your precious time where it really matters. Your research? Why, you ask? Because your success is our mission. But that's not all. Our services cover a wide range. Need to get your latest research published? Glintplus hosts top-notch journals you can count on. Worried about language barriers? Our editing and translation services will refine your work and make it accessible worldwide. Considering compiling your expertise into a book? We're here to help you publish it. And for those who thrive on collaboration, Researchment is a platform for connecting researchers across the globe, fostering innovation and discovery that only happens when brilliant minds unite. We also publish journals for some prestigious institutions and associations. Presently, our journals include Chemistry of the Total Environment, Journal of Mining and Geosciences, Journal of Agriculture and Applied Biotechnology, and Ondo University Journal of Agriculture and Social Sciences. At Glintplus, we take enormous pride in our manuscript review process. It isn't just comprehensive, it's crafted to ensure your work meets the most stringent standards. Yes, our versatility knows no bounds. Moreover, Glintplus is a staunch advocate of knowledge accessibility for all. So if you're aiming to make a significant impact in your field, think of Glintplus as your dedicated partner. We're more than just a scholarly support service. We're a vibrant community dedicated to fostering academic excellence. Stay connected with us through our website, email, or social media channels. Let's push the boundaries of knowledge together. With Glintplus, you're not just surviving in the world of academia, you're thriving.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ahii, for that. Ladies and gentlemen, Glintplus is the best place to be, especially for your academic endeavor. We have an array of journals where we publish quality articles that is accepted worldwide, and we want to encourage you to be part of us, your editing work, your translation work, and so many more. Glintplus is your best companion, especially for your academic and research endeavor. I want to thank you all for being part. The next line on our program will be to introduce. We want to save as much time as possible so that we can give you some other things that are coming behind today. Just like I said in my opening speech, I said today marks the 11th edition, and we are going to have the final edition by next month, and it's going to be celebration galore, where we're going to give award and do so many things. I don't want to open it now. Let me invite Ayomide to please introduce the speaker by reading his citation. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ayomide.
Thank you, Dr. Issa. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, wherever part of the world you are. And I'll go ahead to introduce our guest speaker for today in person of Professor Mathias Ahii Chia. Professor Mathias Ahii Chia graduated with a bachelor's degree in botany from Ahmadu Bello University in 2004 and a master's degree in botany from the same university in 2007. He earned his PhD in ecology and natural resources from Universidade Federal de São Carlos in 2012. He has published over 90 papers in Q1 journals and serves on the editorial board of several international and national journals. Currently, he is a reviewer for several scientific journals, including the Journal of Hazardous Materials, Aquatic Toxicology, Journal of Applied Pharmacology, African Journal of Biotechnology, African Journal of Biotechnology, Science of the Total Environment, African Journal of Ecology, Water, Air and Soil Pollution, Environmental Earth Sciences, Research in Microbiology, Ecotoxicology, and Environmental Safety. He is affiliated with Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, Nigeria, University of Brasilia, Brazil, and the State University of Parabia, Brazil. Currently, he is a professor and researcher at the University of Sao Paulo, Brazil. His research experience is in the field of botany with an emphasis on plant physiology, molecular ecology of algae and cyanobacteria, and aquatic chemistry. His primary interests include physiology, microalgae, trace elements, lipid class composition, fatty acids, biochemical composition, and cyanobacteria bioactive metabolites such as cyanopeptides and cyanotoxins. And I have the honor to bring him to present his over to you, sir.
All right, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me clearly. If you can, then I'll go straight away into the presentation. So this is my presentation here, and it has to do with writing a persuasive and convincing discussion and conclusion. Now, whether you are a researcher or you work in a place that you need to write a report, or you're a student and you are putting together a thesis or a dissertation, there's always a need to discuss what your findings are, or whether it be a report or a research or a questionnaire you've administered. So if you're not able to transfer that information in a way that anyone that is listening to you or reading what you have written can understand it and get to be impacted by what you have done, then the aim, regardless of how good your research has been, will be defeated. And there is a common problem that for those in Nigeria face a lot, and because I've worked in Nigeria for a couple of years, and one of the things is that we sometimes have very good data, but we are unable to write well. And because of that inability to write, we end up not being able to publish our work in good places. So the idea is, how then do we have, a discussion that will be sound, will be concise, will be strong, powerful enough to send home the message of what we want to deliver. But you see, we can't just jump straight into a discussion or conclusion without having a roadmap of where we are going to. So how then do we resolve that? We resolve that simply by understanding what do you call the name? Uh, a scientific paper or a report or dissertation, what the basic structure is like. Now, this gives an overview. Whether you're writing a thesis, whatever you're doing, there's always going to be like a summary, or let's first start from a title. Like in this case here, we're looking at what we call the anatomy of a paper. Now, the question is, that this paper is titled first, are all apples red? So by asking that question already, you have like some form of hypothesis in mind. That means you want to find out if the question you're thinking of in terms of coloration of apples, whether they will always be red or there will be exceptions to the rule. So this person, either Cortland, went ahead to carry out like a survey, investigated to see if apples all come in red or in different colors. And with that, the person ends up getting some form of result. So if you are going to have a report, that means the first part will be to have like some form of a summary of it. So you have, which is your abstract. Then you have an overview, a background where you justify and you try to give a background information of what apples in this case are. And then you say what your objectives are or your aim in this part of the introduction. And also, normally, it should come with some form of, what do you call it, some form of literature review and all of that. Then you move to your methods. Now, the idea of your methodology is to be aligned with your objectives, because the methods are like you are saying, this is how I'm going to get to resolve this research question I'm interested in. So once you have done that, you've gotten your data, you've gotten your results. This person here just went to the grocery store to buy apples and got different types of apples that he could lay his hands on. So at the end of the day, you see the results, then you have whether the red, the yellow, and the green apples according to the frequency of them found. So now you have your results. So the point is, we now know you have this, but what does that really mean? So here you begin to now say, okay, this is what is happening. This is what is happening. Why is this happening? Oh, apparently my hypothesis that there is only one color may not hold true. So this is what will happen. So at the end of the day, because you've had a full structure of what a paper or a thesis, a basic flow should be like, you now have an idea of what you are going to discuss. So you see, you are not just jumping into discussion for the sake of jumping into it, but you are jumping into it because you had objectives to what do you call it, to investigate. You follow the methodology and you've gotten results for that, and now you're trying to say what the implication of these results are, whether your objectives were met or not met. And at the end of that, then you have your conclusion and then your references. So this is the basic flow. So to introduce this, I'll give you an idea that what is the importance of discussion and conclusion in the first place. So it essentially helps you to like try to interpret what your results are all about. Now, by doing that, you demonstrate that importance, that the impact, the extent to which your results are effective to your audience. And this will help to leave a lasting impression, that perception, change of perception, depending on what your objectives are, or direction. In fact, some research, literally for me talking to you via video conferencing from thousands of kilometers away, is all a result of results that have been gotten from previous, research, and the publication of this research and the implementation of this finding, which is part of the impression that is allowing us to build on the shoulders of those that have come before us. So at the end of the day, we have like an overview of what the structure, that's what this presentation is going to be about, what a discussion should be structured like, how you should craft a compelling conclusion, and also the writing tips for persuasion and clarity. Because you see, discussion and conclusion are just part of a broader scheme or structure of writing. So if you can understand the basics for persuasion and clarity, then it helps you to become a very effective writer. So what do we expect the structure of a discussion should be like? Now, the first part of any discussion is you begin by giving that in concise form a summary of your findings. Now, take note, as much as possible, you must refuse that temptation to try to, uh, to recast every result that you've gotten. See, students have this bad behavior, which sometimes has to do with lack of proper orientation, that you see a student discussing his or her work and then repeating verbatim the same results that had already been stated in the results section. That is wrong. So, and that is why the term here, that as much as possible, it should be a concise summary. Now, the reason why you are doing that is very simple. Now, look at the example down here. The example says, for example, you say, our findings indicate a significant correlation between X and Y, supporting our initial hypothesis that X and Y do occur between maybe a particular season or a particular one influences the other. Now, you see, you are no longer going back to the results where most likely you say something like there was a significant correlation between this and the correlation value was this and that. No, you are avoiding that. You are trying to guide the thought of the reader to the direction of what you want to discuss, because you want to lay a foundation upon which your discussion will go. So once you have done that, now, even you listening to me right now, you are now thinking, okay, our finding indicates a significant correlation between this and this. So what does that mean? So that takes you to the next step. That is interpretation of what that result means. That means you now explain, okay, what is the significance of that correlation? Does that mean that when one increases, the other one increases too? So now, by the time you begin to explain what that significance means, now this significance will change from field to field, from pattern to pattern, but the basic concept remains the same. So you've spoken about that significance, then you now say, okay, this thing we have found, is it that we are the ones that are the first set of people to find it? So you compare what your finding, that is your results, with previous studies. So if previous studies have shown something similar, you say something like, our results agree with XYZ that did this and that, and show that this, that, and that happened. But if it's the other way around, you say, unlike previous studies by A et al., our results show that this. That means showing that you are building from what do you call the name, or you are adding new information to existing knowledge. So this also gives you an opportunity to discuss unexpected results and potential reasons for them. So that way you begin to build up, you begin to understand what you are saying. So then you still move on to implications. That is, now you see, a lot of papers that we write, I don't know, sometimes I call it like intellectual laziness. Like, we tend to be lazy because once we just say, okay, we give a summary of our results, we say something a little bit about what we think that is happening there, and then we now say, oh, our studies agree with this person, our studies do not agree with so person. And in fact, the worst set of people are those ones that will just tell you that let's say something like, we found a positive correlation between A and or X and Y, and then they'll not say this agrees with the study of Abdul et al., or Sheung et al., or Obina et al., and they assume that they are done with the the discussion. That is grossly inadequate, because every field of endeavor, every research area has a theoretical background. There are a lot of materials upon which every field is built and every area is built. That means you must go back to read to understand the reason behind why certain things occur. What are the processes guiding why those things occur? So this is where your theoretical implications comes into play. So something like this study advances the field by providing new insight into this, And this insight shows that, for example, if you look at the image by the side, X, Y, join together the synergy. So what is that going to be? Then in academia, one of the things that we must always recognize is that there are several limitations. So no one should ever be so arrogant to forget that no matter how much you have done your work, there is no work that is perfect. There is always going to be some form of criticism for what you have done, and that is true. And that is the reason why research keeps building on research from point to point, from time to time. So the first and the smartest thing, the wisest thing to do is to acknowledge your own limitation. You should preempt that. You should say something like, oh, one of the limitations of this study is this, this, and this. Or some of the limitations of this study are this, and that. So once you've pointed that, but it's not enough to say that. You can now suggest, okay, that because this is the limitation of this study, you can guide where future research should follow. You now say future research should consider this, that, and that. But that is also not enough. You should also think about, okay, something like you understand there is a limitation, but how and what did you do to overcome these limitations? So, do these limitations compromise the quality of your finding? You should state that there. So if they do not, you say something like, despite these limitations, our study introduces new knowledge, and this new knowledge is very critical in this, and that. So, but if future studies can further address these other components, then it will give a more holistic understanding of what is being portrayed. So as you go ahead talking about these limitations, because you have started suggesting what future studies should be, that takes you straight into what recommendations should be. So you should offer suggestions for future research and what areas those research should explore on. Don't just give blanket statements. Be as specific as possible, guided by your own findings. That means you should provide actionable recommendations based on the findings of that current paper or thesis or dissertation or report that you are writing on. So don't give recommendations that are out of scope, out of the focus or the context of what you have done. That means the recommendation should be tied to your work and should help to build on the contributions that your work has made to the field. Never forget that. And that is why it is important to critically look at your work, self-criticize, interrogate what you are discussing. So the next part is, okay, how do we craft a compelling conclusion? Now, remember that your conclusion has to be tied to the objectives of your work. Remember that dummy paper I showed on the first slide, where I spoke about aims, objectives, the purpose for your work, the results that are obtained following a specific methodology. And we've gone through what the discussion should be like. So, you must now summarize the key point, that is, briefly recap the main findings of your work and the significance of those findings. But please remember, avoid repeating detailed results from whether your discussion or your results, because this is not the place for it. So once you have done that, you should emphasize what contributions your work has made to the field of study. So it could be something like this, findings that something and something happened significantly contributes by showing that when this happens, this is what is going to be found. So let me give you a simple example. I'll say something like, perhaps I'll move to a paper and show you what I'm talking about. So this is a conclusion from a student of mine, and this was on perfluorooctasulfanoic acid or substances which are surfactants. So the student said something that PFOS inhibits the growth and alters the physiology of Microcystis aeruginosa. So this first sentence here, what it does is that it summarizes what the whole paper is all about. Now, the next sentence here says the surfactant in high concentrations may lead to a larger production of microcysteines, thereby threatening environmental and public health. Now, observe what the student has done. The student is now showing the significance and the implication of the results obtained from the research that she carried out. That if this compound increases in the environment, it will lead to growth or decrease in growth, but lysis, that is the breakdown of organisms that produce high levels of this toxin called microcysteines that causes cancers. And this will threaten the environment as well as public health. Then she went ahead to say this study demonstrated that lower and environmental relevant concentration of PFOS could be disruptive to cyanobacteria populations like that of the Microcystis aeruginosa. So coming back here, you see what that conclusion did was to show you the significance of the study and also gave you final thoughts by telling you the disruptive nature of what PFOS will be to populations of those organisms. So you must conclude with a strong, what do you call it, memorable statement. For example, in conclusion, this study highlights the critical role of this. In that, our own case, we said it shows the disruptive nature of that compound. So you should pose a thought-provoking question or suggest an action. So these findings prompt further investigation into this. So that way you are guiding them, you are like pushing them towards where the next points of their research should follow. So while I'm done with basically the discussion and conclusion aspect, I'll just give you a few tips on general writing, and I think this should be really, really good, and this should help a lot of you. Now, the rule of writing now is to avoid as much jargon as possible. Don't be like this guy on the right side of my slide that says to his friend that we need some new jargon. The public are starting to understand that we are what we are talking about. Don't be like that guy, because the whole point of writing is to communicate, is to tell somebody, pass your information in very straightforward, simple, understandable language. You should only use jargon and complex sentence only when there is no other way of presenting that result or that information. So for example, our results show a direct relationship between A and B. So you see, simple results show direct relationship between subject A, subject B. Now, instead of what some of us do, the results obtained from the analysis indicate a direct correlation between variables A and B. So you are making it unnecessarily long. You are making it unnecessarily redundant. So avoid as much use of passive writing. Try to write in the active form as much as possible. And you must ensure there is a logical flow. That means if I move from one paragraph in your write-up to the next paragraph, I should be able to continue and see how each paragraph connects to each other, not just what do you call it, dumping topics that are unrelated or disjointed within your work. It makes it difficult for anyone to follow or to understand what you are trying to say. So as much as possible, you should use traditional transitional phrases such as furthermore, in addition, however, albeit, in contrary. Now, all of that, what it does is that it helps to direct the mind of your reader. It helps the reader to have a pause. If you say, however, okay, that means this is going to contrast what I just finished reading. So that way it helps whoever is going through what you have written to enjoy what you've written and also easily comprehend what you are trying to say. So I'll go back to Farida's paper again to show you one or two things here. So here, this paragraph here, let's see. Yeah. So this paragraph here wants to talk about oxidative stress. Don't worry about if you're not a scientist, you don't need to worry about it. It's just saying if you expose these organisms to toxic compounds, it will stress them. And if it stresses them, it will cause an increase in the amount of these compounds here in the organism. So if these compounds are increasing, something is going to happen within them. So that increase in the compound causes what do you call it, lipid peroxidation, blah blah blah, and all of that. But observe something, that towards the end of this paragraph here, I want to show you how the paragraph connects to the next paragraph. Now it says higher levels of MDA observed in this study compared to the control indicate that PFOS damage the cells of Microcystis aeruginosa. In algae, xenobiotics increase the production and accumulation of ROS, that is reactive oxygen species, such as hydrogen peroxide. And at the rise of intracellular hydrogen peroxide observed in PFOS-treated M. aeruginosa implies an increase in oxidative stress, that high levels of ROS in cyanobacteria during PFOS exposure might activate antioxidant system comprising POD and GST. Now you see, everything in this paragraph was talking about oxidative stress, induction, and damage. But now, at the end of this paragraph here, we started introducing another fact, that if these organisms are stressed and their ROS levels are increasing, something is going to happen. The cell will react by increasing its own defense to fight against what do you call the name? That increase. So if that is happening, it will increase the production of antioxidant system. And now notice the next paragraph. It starts directly talking about algae activate their enzyme antioxidant systems, which include GST and POD. So you see, the person reading is not confused. The paragraphs connect directly to each other, making it easy for the person to move from one point of the write-up to the other without any form of confusion. So you see, there has to be this connection between every component of what you are writing about. If there is no connection, then you shouldn't be even talking about the point of that report as a whole. So You should, as much as possible, try to make sure that you have strong argumentation, that you should put forth strong argument, that you use evidence to back up your claims. So, for example, we say from table 2, and
Prof,
the
you have
data
less than
from it
5 minutes
supports
more.
I'm already even done, so no
Thank you, sir.
problem. That's 5 minutes
Thank you,
more
sir.
than enough. So,
Okay.
so data from table 2 supports the hypothesis that this and this happens. Then you say, now you should anticipate and address potential counter arguments. Why some say this is what our data suggests, and what is the implication of that? You should use active voice, as I already said, instead of passive voice. As much as possible, you should be consistent in your tone and style throughout. It shouldn't be disjointed. So ensure that all sessions align with the overall narrative of your paper or your write-up. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Prof. Ladies and gentlemen, you agree with me that this is very detailed and very exciting. And I am very, very sure that our audience will have learned a lot from your presentation, sir. In fact, I really appreciate you. Without repeating what you have said, I have 4 bullets that Prof have discussed. Ladies and gentlemen, he said in discussion, present results. That's number 1. Present it. And he said, don't present everything that is already written in the table. High points. What you want people to understand from the result. Those of us in social economics, don't bother that Prof is more into the main sciences, the physical sciences. But let me give a good example so that some of us who are in the social economics can understand it. You find at the age of farmers, for example, some of them are between 20 and 30. Others are between 30 and 40, 40 to 50, and others. When you are writing results, don't bother to tell us everything that is inside that table. That it was found that those between 20 and 30 were 20%. Those between 30 and 40 were 15%. Those between 40 and 50 were so percent. We don't need all that. Which one is the most critical? Especially maybe the one that is high, and especially maybe the one that contrasts with it. Oh, this result presents or shows or indicates that most farmers, or the majority of farmers, were between so age range. Instead of repeating all that can be read in the table, and I think we can understand that. He also mentioned the second one, that you should interpret the result. We should not forget that. That is what, those are the 4 things that goes into discussion. Discussion means present the result, interpret it, compare it with previous findings, then draw implications. Especially for those of us who are students here, hold those 4 things. When you say you have discussed and we can't see those 4 things in the discussion, then it is not enough. And I think that will help us a lot. Then for the conclusion, what I draw from Prof's discussion is that do not repeat results. Conclusion is not about result. We don't want to see result there. Then make it very concise. Concise means that when somebody writes a conclusion and you are seeing almost a half of a page, don't bother to read it. It is not a conclusion, because conclusion will never be as big or so much like that. Then finally, on conclusion, he said, while you are concluding, the focus should be on the objective that you are concluding on, the specific objective under the main title that you are concluding on. I think with this, it's been a very wonderful one. Prof has gone into some other minute details, especially with regards to your tone, the use of adjective, the use of however, the use of your language, so that things, your discussion can flow very well. Once again, I want to thank you, my professor, for this beautiful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the next thing is for us to have questions. My belief is that you will have posted your question in the chat room, so that from now our technical person will start scrolling some of the questions. Prof, over to you, and I hope you take them as they come in. One is prompting already from
Yeah,
Murtala
I can
Ridwan.
see what are potential risks of overstating conclusion and how can that be avoided. I think most likely, I suspect you want to say overstating your results and how can that be avoided, because you cannot be overstating conclusion when it's conclusion you are writing. So let's take, for example, you found out that I don't know if you're an art person, so let me use an example in the arts. So you found out that you monitor the prices of Gary. At least we can all understand that within the last 2 years, Gary jumped from, let's say, 200 naira, and you follow the trend monthly, and now it's
Okay.
over 2,000 naira. So you don't need to start saying something like, in January of 2002, no, 2020, Gary was 5 naira. In March, it was 20. In May, it became 50, blah, blah, blah. You see, so you see, that way you are overdoing it. No, you can just simply state that prices of Gary improved more than exponentially over the 2-year period.
Beautiful one.
And now say the implication of that, say something like, okay, because this has increased, people now find it difficult to get simple source of nutrition because it is no longer affordable to them. Then you can now say, okay, now what will now be your recommendation? Because you are in the apps, you say the government must think about ways of either ensuring that inflation is kept where it is and improving the spending power of the populace to be able to meet up to that and be able to afford that for their day-to-day living. So you see, I've just captured the point I showed you using sciences in my presentation.
Yeah.
You get it? So that's just basically it.
Thank you, Prof. There are more questions coming, so we
Feel
can take
free.
them as sharp as possible so that we can take as much as possible. Here is another one for you.
Yeah, okay. So when we are told not to state and discuss all what is on the table, if I'm not mistaken, how can we now meet up the number of pages required? Thanks. I think, you see, this is also part of the problem of our educational system, which is also a reflection of our society. Our society is disjointed and is confused. Let me put it that way, that what normally, if you travel out, shouldn't take you even 5 minutes to do, you can find yourself for months trying to do it back home. And why is that? Because we've developed a lot of redundancy within the system, that the system is no longer efficient. Now, sorry for using this word, what the hell do you mean by number of pages required? It makes no sense. We should always go after content quality of what the work is all about. Let me shock you.
And not the number of pages.
Number of pages. Yes, sir. Let me shock you. I published 6 papers from my PhD. And if I remove the table of content, the preliminary pages, the whole of my thesis was less than 100 pages.
Imagine.
Because with the preliminary pages and all of that, it was 125 or 124 pages or so. So imagine, and I got 6 papers from that, and all papers in Q1 high impact journals.
Wow, wow, wow.
So the point I'm making here is that it is not about the number of pages. Forget about quantity, go for quality. You can write a page that can change the whole world, and you can write
Thank you, Prof. You
10,000
have
pages that will do nothing.
Thank you, Prof. I love the way you have hit the nail on the head, that it is not about quantity but quality. Let's get to the next question, please.
So, as a new researcher, how can we identify quality research work? This is very, very good. And
Yeah.
the easiest way is that you should look for reputable publishing houses. And what do I mean by that? The easiest way, before even looking for reputable publishing houses, because you are a new researcher, I expect you to have a mentor. I expect you
Yeah.
to have people that you have read one thing or the other in their field. So, and sometimes these people are readily accessible to you. They could be somebody in your department. Now, they don't necessarily have to be exactly in your field, but there are certain things that cut across fields. So, what do? Talk to somebody that you see that is rated highly. People talk about this, and so just as long as you're in research, you can see people around you that are into research. So,
Yeah.
get to talk to them, ask them, how do I get quality research? So they will direct you on the type of publishers to go for. Now, a lot of us, I call it intellectual laziness. I think you heard me use it during the presentation. And the reason is because, you see, a lot of us just want to publish because we want promotion. So we look for any publishing house that one will not delay us, that will just quickly publish our papers without any stress. And you find
Thank you,
us,
Prof.
you find us
I think this
stressing.
person is sorry, Prof. I think this
Yeah,
person is coming from the background of not all published work are good. So
exactly.
I'm doing a research. I could get as many publications. How do I know
Yes.
which one is
The
good?
first place to go, and this is the sweetest and easiest way, look for review
Yeah.
papers in the field, because it's difficult to even sit down to write a review. Somebody that is not even well grounded will not even be able to sit down to write a good review. So start from reading review papers. By the time you read 3 or 4 or 5, you begin to see which one is good and which one is not good. You'll be able to judge for yourself as time goes on.
Thank you, Prof. Let's
So
quickly go to the next one.
other
Under
conclusions,
conclusion,
what if my topic has has more than
has more
2
than two
objectives?
objectives.
Do I pick one objective to conclude on? No, you conclude on both objectives, and it's very simple.
Thank you,
Uh,
Prof.
because when you
Any next
give,
one?
no, sorry, let me just help this person. When you
All right,
give
sir.
that summary of your findings, you are summarizing based on both objectives, and you can
Good.
give the implication of each of them in short sentences, just one sentence for each of your objective, and that will sort it out.
Very wonderful. Thank you very much, Prof. Ayomide, is there any other question that is prompting? I want to encourage all of us, even if you have a question after this program, drop it for us and it will be taken. In fact, we'll do a follow-up with Prof so that any other question that comes after this, we will ensure that Prof answer it accordingly. Thank you very much. Because of time, we want to appreciate Prof for his efforts, and it is time to present to you our certificate. Glint Plus is operating from our pockets. We are not making money, but we believe that we can do this. And we want to appreciate you for joining us to do this together without waiting for us to pay you. But we want to pay you with this. If you allow me, I will crave your indulgence to be on your feet so that you can have this certificate, Prof. A certificate of appreciation presented to Professor Mathias Ahii, Chia, in recognition of your exceptional contribution as a guest speaker at the August 2024 edition of Researchment Academy on writing persuasive and convincing discussion and conclusion, held on the 9th of August. Congratulations, Prof.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir.